Good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Dornan, and it's very good to be here, very pleased to be here. And I'll just go through a few things about myself and explain what I do. I'm a spiritual healer, and I've been doing this for now 17 years. And if you've heard this before, as I know this young man has, then you're going to hear it again. So what it is, I'd always had clairvoyant readings because my mother had always gone to see clairvoyants. So I always used to like to see really good clairvoyants. And I'd gone along to see this lady, and because she was a very good clairvoyant, and she used to take on my mother's voice. My mother was from Scotland, both my parents were Scots, so I'm first generation English. And what happened was she sort of leaned forward while she was giving me this reading and said, you know, one of your family is, or someone very close is going to have a problem with their lungs. And I said, oh, you know, who's that? You know, and she leaned forward and she went, you? You know, and I was really shook up by this because I used to smoke cigarettes, 30, 40 a day, whatever. And she, you know, I knew I had to get help to overcome this nicotine addiction. So I went along and I ended up at this spiritual church to get spiritual healing. And this lady on the stage there, the medium, she said, I come to that man with these wonderful gifts. And I'm looking at this woman, she went, I am talking to you, sir. And me? She went, yeah, you. And I said, oh, hello, but I haven't got gifts, I've just got problems. That's why I'm here, you know. So she said, no, she said, but you need proof, don't you? I said, I sure do, like lots of it. So she said, okay. She said, who was Jock? I said, well, that was my father's name. She said, well, he's over your left shoulder, coming from spirit now, because he passed on as my mother had. And she said, who was Reen? I said, that was my mother's name. She said, well, she's over your other shoulder. Who's Graham? I said, I have a brother called Graham. She said, well, then I am talking to you then, dear. And I'm like, madam, you have my full attention. You know? So she told me about all these gifts I had, and I'm still trying to, well, very nice. But she gave me this proof, I couldn't deny it. So then what, she then said, God bless, and she moved off to the next person that she gave a message to. And for the only time ever, thank goodness, I took on this condition in my lungs. It was awful, and I was gagging. I'm like, oh, I couldn't breathe. It was almost like a cancerous condition. That's what it felt like. And I heard a cough, and there was this lady that was 2 seats away, and I said, excuse me, madam, how are your lungs? And she said, well, actually, they're terrible. I don't know what else to do. And she said, so I've just come here. And I said, well, would you give me your hand? So she gave me a hand. And she gave me a hand. Everything changed because this incredible energy came through my top chakra here, went down to my heart, and I'd always been told that, not always, but I had been told that I had this universal love and compassion. And it kicked in, big time. And it then went down through my arm, into my hand, and into this lady. And I saw her lungs that had these black clouds. I just got this vision. And I saw this like Tinkerbell-like energy come in and neutralise the problem. And it was like, wow, I know what's happening. This is amazing. And it was happening, coming in waves. And after it was over, I said to her, okay, after a few minutes, I said, okay, madam, your right lung, I think, is clear now. Your left lung's going to be clear. I think you're going to be okay. And she said, oh, thank you, dear. And I said, well, my pleasure, but actually, I didn't really do anything. I'm just there. So I turned around, thought, nice old dear, and then nearly fell off the chair because I realised what had happened. And I knew right there and then that I'd been given a gift, and it was a God-given gift. And this wasn't something from a book. This wasn't linked to anything, whether you liked me or disliked me. This was the real deal. And I made a pledge to the divine right there and then that I would try and do justice to what I had been given. And from that point on, my life completely changed. Well, it would, actually. It would, and it did. And so then I ended up that night, I think it was that night, it might be the next night, but it was very close to it. I couldn't sleep because there was this voice in my head, and this voice, I'm sure I can remember it, it went, some develop early, some develop late. Who knows the answers? Who knows their fate? You think you got the answers, you think you got it right. Life says, oh really, and gives you a mighty swipe. And I thought, well, that's, I thought, you know. So I got up and I followed it through, and all of a sudden I'm doing this in rhyme. That's the only way I can write, is in rhyme. So I'm doing all this. It had a start, a middle, and an end, and it had a real nice meaning to it, you know. And I thought, oh, that's a fable. I thought, yeah, that's great. I've never done anything like that in my life. So then all these things started happening. I started to write these fables using animals as the medium. People started arriving with my healings and stuff like that. And I was dealing with people. People would come along with very, very serious complaints. Like this one lady, she was one of my first people I saw. For the first 10 years that I had these gifts, I didn't charge any money because I didn't need to. Then I got broke, and then I did. And it gets you around the world and this, that, you know. And so you have to charge money if you're going to be moving around the world. Otherwise, security picks you up because you say, I'm a very nice person. Can you let me on a free plane ride? Yeah, you know, security, take him away. So anyway, I then started to charge money after 10 years. But the first 10 years, I didn't have to, so I didn't. And I was keen. God, was I keen. I would hear about someone that wanted a healing. I would travel 150 miles to give a healing, and then travel 150 miles back. And people would say, well, can I at least pay for your petrol? No, madam, no, I'm fine, and all this. But I was dealing with some very, very serious cases. There was this one lady that she had this neurological complaint, and it's called dystonia. And what it was, she kept clicking like this, her neck, and she couldn't stop this muscle spasm. She had these huge muscles where she had developed this through the twitching and everything else. So she had this going to her left-hand side. So as I'm there, she kept flicking to the right. And I finally went round to her. I said, look, man, any chance you could just try and keep your head like a little bit? You're flinging it round to the right. And she said, well, actually, I'm not doing anything. It's like someone's taking their hands and flinging it to the right here. And I thought, wow, this is really, really happening. And it's happening on levels that I can't really understand at the moment. But I knew one thing. I was that vessel, and this was really happening. We got to the stage that it was just a slight flicker, and I went to see her just a couple of times. So these things were happening a lot. And then what happened was that I ended up, I left London. I had a successful business in London as a plastering and screeding contractor in the commercial sector of construction. I was doing well, buildings, embassies, and so forth like that. I was doing very good. But I left that when, as the gift started to get stronger, and I decided to, I went to the south of England where I was on the coast there, but what I decided to do was I had these gifts, but I didn't understand scientifically or medically what was happening. I knew what was happening, but I didn't understand it. So I decided to go on this quest, and I still had quite a lot of money and stuff like that, so I decided to go on this, and I had been given this offer to go to Brazil, to this house, spiritual house. And I went there and I got accepted. They said, come on through, because it was very rare in those days for anyone to go to this spiritual house. So while I was going to this spiritual house, I thought, well, I'll go to Brazil. And I thought, why not carry on? So I then thought, well, I'll go to Asia, and I'll go to Bali, and I'll go to India, and I'll go here, and I'll go. And I thought, yeah, I like this. This is good. And so what I did, I went to Brazil, and I was there for 6 months. Well, in this particular house, they had some amazing people that were working there. And at this particular place, they would have maybe 100 mediums working. And they would have I think it was 12 doctors, and 6 scientists, a nuclear physicist, and this and that. I mean, these were really, really smart people that were scientifically breaking down the facts of spirituality. So I knew what was going on through my head, but I